I threw open the door and found my wife in bed and having sex with Chad. Somehow they hadn't noticed me, and I turned and ran out of there and went straight home. I couldn't believe it. My wife was cheating on me, and her family was covering for her. Enraged, so I am looking at getting a divorce, and I have to say that although it really came out of nowhere, that honestly, I think that I'll be just fine once it's over and done with. So let me just start off by saying that I know that I'm nowhere close to perfect, but I truly do try my best to be a good person. So when my soon-to-be ex-wife's family did what they did, it really hurt me a lot, and I felt like I had no better option than to divorce my wife immediately. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Hi, my name is Ryan, and I've been married to my wife Mary for a little over 5 years now. We used to talk about having children when we first got married, but over the years Mary has changed her mind and no longer wants to have them, which used to make me upset. But I eventually just accepted that so long as I was married to her, that would just be how things were. When we first got married, we were so madly in love, but my new in-laws really didn't approve of me. On the day of our wedding, they made it abundantly clear that they hated me. I can't believe my only daughter is marrying someone as hideous as you. Excuse me?
Yeah, he's nowhere as amazing as Chad was. Why on earth did she ever break up with him anyways?
Although their words hurt, I chose to ignore them and just do my best to enjoy the day. Thankfully, right after the ceremony, I didn't interact with them for the rest of the day, and I was able to really just celebrate the start of a long and loving relationship. Or at least that's what I thought. A few months after we were married, my in-laws began to openly say more hurtful things. Mary did try to defend me sometimes, but just as often, she would simply ignore them and let them insult me.
Oh, Mary, you really should keep an eye on what Ryan is eating. He's gained so much weight.
Yeah, and he's balding too. Such a shame. Did you know that Chad entered a bodybuilding competition last week?
Dad, stop bringing Chad up. I don't want to make Ryan feel insecure.
I couldn't understand why they kept bringing up Chad all the time. I had seen photos of him and he was very attractive, but as far as I knew, he was a massive jerk. Mary had never really told me why they had actually broken up, but I just figured that she was with me now. She had agreed to marry me, so it would be silly of me to be jealous of someone that she had once dated, in spite of the fact that her parents and even her sister thought that I wasn't good enough for her. And so, the years passed by. My wife and I worked on our careers, and we both benefited from that, until my wife's company suddenly began downsizing and they let her go. Up to that point, she had been the breadwinner of the family since she made more than double what I did, and the loss of her income definitely made things harder around the house, but we managed to make do. As a favor to my wife, though, we didn't mention to anyone that she had lost her job, as she was so embarrassed that she had lost such a high-paying career and was now forced to try to find another company that would hire her and pay her a similar salary, and unfortunately, she wasn't very successful. Around that time, my own company began making some big changes to the structure of the company, and I got really worried that they might do something similar to what my wife's company had done, but there was nothing I could really do at the time. Instead, I just had to hope for the best and try to remain positive. One day, my sister-in-law showed up at our house and asked if I wanted to go out for coffee. It was a rather odd request, but I assumed that maybe she needed to talk to me about my wife's upcoming birthday. That maybe she wanted to plan a surprise birthday party, and that she wanted to include me in the planning of it. However, as soon as we got to the coffee shop, she barely said anything to me and just spent the entire hour that we were there on her phone. When I tried to ask why she had invited me to go have coffee with her, she shrugged and just said that she felt like it. Confused, I went home and just shrugged it off as something very unusual. But a week later, my mother-in-law did the exact same thing, and just like with my sister-in-law, she spent the entire hour on her phone and barely said anything to me. Once was bad enough, but a second time was too much for me to just sit idly by and not say something. What's going on here? Last week, Taylor did this exact same thing. And now this week, you ask me out for coffee, and then we sit in silence for an hour? Is this some kind of weird test? Like, what exactly is going on?
Oh, nothing. Just some family stuff that we are trying to work out. We'll be able to tell you soon, hopefully, if everything works out.
I was so incredibly confused, and when I got home, I noticed that Mary was out of the house, and so I waited for her to get home to tell her about how odd her family was acting. The second she came in the door, though, she smelled heavily of cologne, and not one that I wore. my trouble detector began going off. "Hey, sweetheart, where did you go?"
Oh, just out. I went shopping with my sister.
"Oh, okay." I wanted to ask her what she bought or where she went so I could try to catch her in a lie. There was something going on and I knew that I could just be paranoid, but something deep down told me that I wasn't. And so, despite the fact that it was an invasion of privacy, I put a phone tracker on my wife's phone when she was asleep, and then I waited. Sure enough, the next week, my sister-in-law asked me to join her for coffee, and just like before, she just sat across from me and didn't say a word. And so, I figured now would be a good time to see where my wife was, and I was surprised to see that she was at my in-laws' home. "Please excuse me for a few minutes. I need to use the facilities."
Yeah, whatever. I'll be waiting here.
With her face buried in her phone, she didn't notice when I stood up and walked out of the diner and to my car. Without a second thought, I drove over to my in-laws' house and saw a strange car in their driveway. I rushed into their house and instantly noticed that no one was home, except I heard noises coming from my wife's old bedroom. I threw open the door and found my wife in bed and having sex with Chad. Somehow they hadn't noticed me, and I turned and ran out of there and went straight home. I couldn't believe it. My wife was cheating on me, and her family was covering for her. Enraged, I called up a lawyer and demanded that they draft up divorce papers so that I could serve my wife with them as soon as she got home. I then called a locksmith to come out and change the locks on all of the doors to the house, and then packed up all of Mary's clothes and toiletries, and then waited for Mary to come home. When she did, she began pounding on the front door mercilessly and kept ringing the doorbell. I threw open the front door and then threw all of her belongings at her. Once she was covered in her own belongings, I let her have it. I can't believe that after all the love and support that I've given you, that you would just throw it all away for Chad. How dare you?
What are you talking about?
Don't lie to me. I saw you having sex with Chad at your parents' house in your old bedroom. I had trust and faith in you, and you just threw that all away. And for what exactly? She really didn't have an answer for me and just hung her head in shame.
Sorry. But my family just really likes him more, and he's so good-looking too.
That was it. That was all I needed to hear, and so I slammed the door right in her face. Within a week, I had served her divorce papers, and we were forced to go to court a month later. Thankfully, the judge thought that because of her previous work experience and the fact that she had cheated on me, that I should be entitled to the house as well as a small monthly alimony payment. It wasn't much, but it made paying the bills a lot easier. Not long after that, my work contacted me and made me an amazing offer. As part of their restructuring, they wanted to know if I would be interested in taking a managerial position at one of their branches in a different country. The salary would be nearly double what I currently made, and they would help with all moving expenses. It really didn't take much thought for me to accept, and to then sell my house and move to this new country. Amazingly enough, the amount that I got for my house went really far, and I was able to buy a much bigger house near to my new office. My first week there, I instantly knew that it was the right thing to do, as I truly enjoyed my new role in the company, and they had even promised me that if things went well, that I could potentially even be promoted to higher up positions. Things were really beginning to look up for me, and then I got a phone call that I never would have expected. My ex-mother-in-law called me.
Hey, Ryan, listen. We're really sorry about how things went down between you and Mary. I understand that you're probably hurting and feeling really lonely without her, and I wanted to see if you would be willing to take her back and ask her to forgive you for this whole divorce nonsense. How about it?
Are you insane? She cheated on me. As far as I'm concerned, she's Chad's problem now, not mine. And I'm not lonely or feeling all that hurt. I'm in a much better place now than when I was married to her. I make twice what I did and have a massive and fancy house. Why on earth would I take your daughter back? I instantly hung up the phone, but no sooner had I done that than my ex-sister-in-law called me next. I just let it go to voicemail. It went on like that for close to an hour before they finally stopped. As it turned out, my ex-wife's sister and mother had indeed conspired to have Chad pay my ex-wife a visit while I was occupied. They then took turns to distract me while Chad and my ex-wife could become intimate. They had thought that Chad was wealthy and that since my ex-wife made so much money, that the two of them would be a perfect match. However, what they didn't know was that my ex-wife was unemployed, or for that matter, that Chad was too. In fact, Chad was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and was hoping that my ex-wife would bail him out. But of course she couldn't. Once Chad had realized that Mary was poor, he abandoned her without so much as a second thought. Mary was devastated, homeless, and miserable, and wanted desperately for me to take her back. By that time, I had less than zero interest in her and wanted nothing to do with her. I had started dating a woman that lived close by. Her name is Janice, and things were still new, but we had so much in common and had a lot of similar long-term life goals. One of which was to have a child. I've been burned in the past, but this time it feels different. Almost like Janice is my one true soulmate even. Mary still calls every now and then to beg me to take her back, or to ask for money, but I always just laugh at her and tell her that she had done this to herself. That usually makes her angry enough that she won't call for at least a couple of weeks, which is just fine by me. Knowing that she is really struggling now does make my more vindictive side feel justified, but what do you think? Should I have forgiven her?